Boy, that is a good question. It's not, you can't do it alone. Like, I don't know how else to say it, you know? I mean, I laugh a little bit because everything you just said it's overwhelming. And you put it on a piece of paper to look at all the things you have to do in a day, and it's impossible. It's literally impossible. I had the chance to do a little podcast a couple months ago, and a similar question was asked of me, and the best answer I could give was, it's a set of priorities. You know, at the end of the day, we are just a function of our priorities, because you can't do everything. Some people can. They have limited their exposure to say, I can exercise and eat healthy and spend time here and do my job. Entrepreneurs, I know for a fact that they cannot do everything, but you have to be very clear about what matters. I want to say that in two sort of contexts, Rohit. The first is, you have to decide what's more important, family, business, social life, friends. There is a season for each of those, right? I understand founders who don't want to spend time going to the movies or going to shows or whatever it might be because they're building their startup. That's not wrong, just to be clear, right? But it's a choice. And you have to understand that we are all just functions of the choices that we're making. So be intentional with the way you're prioritizing your personal versus your professional life. Let's start there. Then let's kind of drill back down into what's maybe a little bit more specific to this conversation, which is within your professional life, within your startup, the business you're running, how do you manage the important and the urgent? Something's always going to be on fire. There's just no doubt about it. Something's always going to be breaking. A customer could always use a little bit more attention, but that isn't necessarily the important thing that you're doing. The important thing that you're doing, and we actually, when we have conversations with portfolio founders, it's really simple. Tell me about your customers and tell me about your cash. That's a business, and I mean, we can get really complicated and we can get into all these different metrics, but how much money do you have before you run out of money and your business no longer exists? And what are you doing to bring in more customers? I can keep it that simple. And I think there's 1,000 things hovering around that and circulating that affect each of those different categories. But at the end of the day, ask yourself, is this thing going to help me preserve and or bring in more cash? And is this thing that I'm doing going to help me bring in more customers? And if you can do those things and be just absolutely religious about attacking those two buckets, I think you're going to give yourself the best probability of success. And so those are the conversations we have with our portfolio founders. One of the portfolio companies we have right now that I'm just so incredibly impressed with is a group that's building a platform. They're here in Chicago. It's called Ascent. Shout out to the Ascent team. They're building a platform for firefighters. It's an emergency response software platform that sort of consolidates all of the emergency response services that a fire chief might need to use. And I have been so impressed with this team because what they're doing, Rohit, is they are spending their days going to podunk towns in the middle of the state of Illinois and the broader Midwest, right? Places that don't have nice restaurants and aren't downtown Chicago, but they're going there and they're focusing on saying, hey, Fire Chief Marshall, Fire Chief Smith, what are the issues that you're struggling with? How can I make your job better? And more importantly, how can I make sure that at the end of this event that you're going through, we bring home every single firefighter in your unit? And they're sitting there and they're listening to the feedback and then they're building it into the product. And you know what they're doing? That is being customer obsessed. And so too often, I think we see folks building things in a vacuum and building it in their own echo chamber. And they're not going out into the market and saying, hey, tell me what's beautiful about this thing and tell me what's ugly. And I'm going to amplify the beautiful and I'm going to get rid of the ugly. And by the time I'm done, you're going to be a delighted customer.